When I was still a baby priest, a curate in my first parish, either the vicar or I did a children's homily each Sunday. So it must have been the second Sunday in Epiphany in 1983, when I had to do a children's homily on the wedding at Cana. I came up with what I thought was a clever idea. I got two pitchers. One I filled with water, and in the other I put powdered Kool-Aid in the bottom, what you call raro here in New Zealand. As I told the story of the wedding of Cana, I poured the water into the other pitcher, and it turned it red. All was going so well. There were lots of oohs and ahs. But then one little wide-eyed 3-year-old exclaimed, "Turn it back!" So I have a question for you. What is the difference between my story and the story of Jesus' first miracle at Cana? Mine really happened. While there may be a metaphor or two to be found in it, it is historically factual. There is no historical truth in John's account. It is a metaphorical story that John uses superbly in his gospel to make his theological point. It is an excellent literary device. As a result, we don't have to get tangled up in questions about whether or not Jesus could turn water into wine. It never happened before or since, so it didn't happen then either. We don't even have to worry about where Cana is. On my 2 trips to Israel, I have been shown 3 places the tour guides swore to me were Cana. Since it is a mythical place, it can be anywhere. It can be anywhere transformation occurs. But don't be distressed. The meaning of the story doesn't depend on it having happened. It is a signpost saying Jesus was a radical change agent. It does not say following Jesus will mean we will have a cellar full of fine wine. I don't think what I'm saying is too shocking. Earlier this year, we had a billboard, another one, that showed a famous painting of the wedding at Cana. There was a magnifying glass over it, showing the guests sneaking in bottles of wine. The caption was a question: gospel truth? Couldn't have been too controversial. No one painted over it or tore it down. But the metaphorical truth John is telling in his story is that controversial. He is saying that Jesus' radical call for change, for transformation, comes with a warning. It has a direct connection to his crucifixion. John connects Jesus' first miracle, a miracle of transformation, and his crucifixion with a conversation he has with his mother on both occasions. John uses the phrase, the mother of Jesus, instead of her name on both occasions. And on both occasions, Jesus addresses his mom as woman. The only difference in the exchange is at the wedding, he tells her his hour has not yet come. In the second, he speaks from the cross. His hour has now come. The story is full of signs and symbols the church has pointed out over the centuries. Jewish water for purification, pointing to the sin-cleansing water of baptism. Wine for the feast, pointing to the communion cup. The marriage, pointing to the intimacy of the divine-human relationship that the church sees as Jesus as the bridegroom and the church as the bride. The wedding feast, pointing to the bountiful nature of God's reign. It is hard to say if John intended all of this in his metaphor. The nature of metaphorical language is that it often conveys more meaning than the author intended. But it is clear John intended to say that the story of Jesus is about a wedding feast where the wine never runs out. What did this mean to John? Being a mystic, he could only use poetic language to explain the nature of abundant life, the kind of life Jesus would have us live. But a party that never runs out of good wine comes close. What would make up an abundant life besides having a hangover? Looking at Jesus' life, it would seem to include living a life of integrity that is true to the divine image residing within us. It would mean living in the moment where guilt and dread cannot drag us down. It would involve enjoying and appreciating others and treating them with respect. It would be a life lived fearlessly. As I believe fear not hate is the opposite of love, it would be a life where love permeates all our actions. So the question becomes, how do we join the feast? How do we make the Jesus story our story? Leo Tolstoy once observed, "Everyone thinks about changing the world, but no one thinks about changing him or herself." He seems to be suggesting that where change is concerned, people prefer to behave like an ostrich. When we do, it might be good to ask, if our head is in the sand, what's up? One of my favorite pastimes on the internet is reading the comments after news reports and blogs. Some I find amusing, some intelligent, some informative. But a lot of the time I see, what's up? These are the comments that tell others how to make the world more to the blogger's liking. They're not offering a vision of a more perfect world for all, but blaming others with disdain for their personal dissatisfaction with the way the world is. There is no suggestion that they might take personal responsibility for making a difference, or more importantly, that they are part of the problem. When I read their comments, I ask, what's up? But it is not just bloggers who do this. This week, in response to the horrible tragedy in Haiti, a televangelist who once ran for president in the US, Pat Robertson, chose to use his popular forum to blame the victims for their tragedy. He said that the people of this island nation, one of the poorest in the world, were being afflicted because their ancestors made a pact with the devil. The supposed pact was made in the late 18th century, when the slaves of this French colony rose up against their masters and threw them out. They then established the second oldest democracy in the world. What he was doing was blaming the poor, black people, so he wouldn't have to look at himself. A slave revolt is a threat to anyone who holds or desires to hold power. What's up, Pat? Why not use your forum to invite people to contribute to Oxfam or some other agency trying to help? Better yet, why not contribute a significant portion of your millions to help them? It beats making Christianity even harder to swallow than it already is. Of course, if I spend my time complaining like the likes of Pat, rather than focusing on how I change myself, I have to ask, what's up, Clay? For if I want to be part of the transformational story of Jesus, if I want to participate in the feast that he is, I have to look at how I can be part of that story. How can I be more like him, the human face of God?